we'll go through it here. I've got the response from FINRA that they submitted on Friday. I didn't get it. I didn't see it until after I finished the show. It had been posted earlier, but no one tagged me in it. It's pretty weak sauce. As my roommate, who's a paralegal, says, it seems kind of hysterical. Like they're in hysterics. So we'll go through that. And Quiet Quest, MMTLP news. Oh yes. Oh yeah, duh. I'm going to the chat and I was going to read this whole stupid thing and then I didn't. Got distracted. Yes. Could they open trading before May 30th? Probably not. But anyway, before I continue the questions, where I leave off, left at Holgerson's 2:10 p.m. That's where I left off. Nope, we don't want Google Chrome. Oh, no, Google Earth. We want Chrome. Boom. Okay, this won't take long. It's only 13 pages, and most of it's just gobbledygook. Okay. So this is FINRA's response to Rosa's motion to amend her complaint. Basically, she's saying, Your Honor, a bunch of new information came to light. I need to add this information to my complaint because I got more reasons to sue FINRA for because they suck. And so then she listed out 90 pages of how much they suck. And the response is 13 pages long, and most of it is meh. So, all right. This is FINRA, defendant's financial... FINRA opposes plaintiff's motion for leave to amend complaint in support of its opposition. FINRA states as follows. In direct violation of her obligations or local rules of this court, plaintiff filed a motion for leave to amend her complaint without first attempting to meet and confer with FINRA. That failure alone is sufficient basis to deny plaintiff's motion. However, like the original complaint, the proposed amended complaint is also subject to dismissal because FINRA is absolutely immune from suit in the performance of its regulatory functions. In addition, the amended complaint does not cure the fundamental defects and pleading deficiencies identified in FINRA's motion to dismiss the complaint, which is fully briefed. Because the amended complaint cannot withstand a motion to dismiss, leave to amend would be futile. For these reasons, the court should deny plaintiff's motion for leave to amend the complaint, and the court should grant FINRA's motion to dismiss with prejudice. So basically they're saying, you can't sue us, nanny boo-boo, you suck. And they're saying also that there's a rule in the Northern District of Florida, the 7.1b that's here, that says if you're going to file any motion whatsoever, you have to call and confer with the enemy before you file that motion. Which is strange because FINRA filed some motions and never called Rosa to confer with her when doing that. That's what a motion to dismiss is. So they're playing a dangerous game here. Plaintiff failed to confer as required by local rules. Plaintiff failed to confer with FINRA's counsel prior to filing the motion in violation of local rule 7.1b. That rule mandates that before filing a motion raising an issue, an attorney for the moving party must attempt in good faith to resolve the issue through meaningful conference with an attorney for the adverse party. The rule applies to both represented and unrepresented parties, with an exception not relevant here, and is intended to conserve the resources of the parties as well as judicial resources. The failure to confer prior to filing a motion is alone basis for denial. Because plaintiff has failed to comply with local rules, plaintiff motion must be denied. Deny motion, quash subpoena, blah, 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 blah. This is citing some things. Here, plaintiff disregarded the local rules and failed to confer with FINRA prior to filing the motion. Accordingly, the motion should be denied. Now, I'm no expert in local rules. I'm no expert on federal courts. I'm not a lawyer. But the spirit of 7.1b, I believe, has to do with motions like I move to add this witness. I move to do this. Not necessarily like, Your Honor, I found more reasons to sue them. Because like you can call and be like, hey, I'm going to sue you guys more than I was. And they'd be like, please, no, don't. That's not really, she never conferred with them when she filed her complaint in the first place, right? You don't have to add more charges. You don't have to like ask for permission from the other party. That's just not how it works. I don't think 7.1b really is a spirit of 7.1b when it comes to something like adding more stuff to your complaint. Plus, again, FINRA filed a motion to dismiss without ever contacting Rosa to discuss the merits of it. So FINRA is in violation of Rule 7.1b, according to their interpretation of it. So, suck on that, FINRA. Proposed amendments to the complaint would be futile. Once a representative pleading has been filed, the federal rules of civil procedure provide that a party may amend its pleading only with the opposing party's written consent or the court's leave. While leave to amend could be freely given when justice so requires, a district court need not allow amendment that would be futile. So they're saying you can't amend unless we give you permission, or unless the court gives you permission. But Rosa asked the court for permission, so what are you going to do? Right? The court can give permission, and FINRA and Bill say shit about it. Proposed amendment is futile when the complaint is amended, would still be properly dismissed or be immediately subject to summary judgment for the defendant. Okay, so FINRA's arguing that you can't amend because this is going to be thrown out anyway. That's what they're saying, because we got immunity. But Rosa showed in her filings multiple times that FINRA had been successfully sued on similar grounds and lost. So they're claiming this absolute immunity thing is total bullshit, and they're going to do it a bunch more times in here. Here, proposed amended complaint is futile for multiple reasons. 1, the amended complaint is subject to dismissal because FINRA is entitled to regulatory immunity. Plaintiff's attempts to address FINRA's immunity in the amended complaint misses the mark and does nothing to overcome the applicability of regulatory immunity to the claims asserted. First, relying on her assertion that in addition to being a regulator, FINRA is a billion-dollar private investment organization, plaintiff argues that FINRA has a private business interest in trading volume and market activity. This unsupported and conclusory assertion does not change the nature of FINRA's regulatory activities. That's not true. It's not unsupported. She literally gave evidence that they have a $1.3 billion investment portfolio. So they lied when they said unsupported. In addition, the additional allegations in the amended complaint do not establish that the MMTLP trading halt was entirely divorced from FINRA's legitimate regulatory duties. Well, you have to show that it was entirely divorced from FINRA's regulatory duties, right? Or they show that it wasn't. Because Rose is like, I don't know because they won't show us the books. And FINRA's saying, well, we're not going to show you the books. But it's obviously unrelated. You can't make that claim without evidence. And FINRA has not shown evidence. In any of this, they have not shown a slice of evidence that supports their arguments here. Instead, the allegations further emphasize that all the conduct in which FINRA is alleged to have engaged regarding MMTLP arises directly from the discharge of its duties under the Exchange Act. No. The entire point was Rosa was able to show that A, their argument that it was a halt due to the fact that settlement would be a problem was bullshit, because FINRA in its own frequently asked questions said it had to do with a glitch. B, the Freedom of Information Act request revealed that FINRA, via the SEC, knew that there was a bunch of fraud going on and did not address that. C, twice FINRA filed corporate actions saying that this would end on the 12th, and they had no problem doing that. So, if FINRA was doing things in its regulatory interest, it would have done things in its regulatory interest, the capacity of its duty as a regulator. They did not. They had multiple opportunities over years to do that, and they failed every single solitary time. So, when they say, she can't sue us because we're just doing our regulatory duties, they never did their regulatory duties, and all of a sudden, we're like, halt! Because they saw what a mess them not doing the regulatory duties was resulting in. So, yeah, they didn't do their job properly. And I think arguing them not doing their job properly is them doing their job is a bunch of bullshit. Okay. For example, plaintiff adds allegations related to a December 5th, 2022 email from FINRA to the SEC, in which FINRA indicates that it was blue sheeting both MMAT and MMTLP. That email, which states FINRA was looking at the two issuers from a fraud manipulation angle, demonstrates FINRA is engaged in regulatory activities to monitor markets. In addition, the allegations regarding failures to deliver offer nothing more than unsubstantiated conjecture and audacious assumptions about covert market activity that FINRA allegedly allowed. All right. The fraud in those emails were not about the issuers. It didn't say anything about the issuers. It just said there appears to be fraud. Second, yes, failures to deliver offer a very substantial ability to conjecture, because failure to deliver is naked shorting. Naked shorting is illegal. So if you're allowing naked shorting of huge amounts, we're talking failures to deliver shares 40 days in a row, where tens or hundreds of millions of shares are not being delivered, that is fraud. That is a lot of fraud. That is mountains of fraud. And your job as FINRA is to stop fraud from happening, and you did nothing about that fraud. So if you're going to argue that you can't be sued for doing your regulatory duties and you never did your regulatory duties, then you can be friggin' sued. That is a very, very stout argument. Okay. Plaintiff's assertion that failures to deliver are permitted without enforcement regulation does not change the nature and function of FINRA's conduct. So they're saying, well, yeah, a whole bunch of failures to deliver and naked selling happen, but like, that's not our problem, says the regulator whose job it is to make sure that failures to deliver don't happen. In fact, plaintiff admits FINRA has the duty to regulate, oversee, and overhaul much of the complexities that are faced in this case. Yes, they do. And did they oversee it? No. That's the entire reason why she's suing, you dipshits. So, oh my God, this is like, I think the first draft was in crayon. Okay, so FINRA is arguing that because their duty is to make sure this stuff doesn't happen, and this stuff happened, that she can't sue them for not making sure it didn't happen. Does that make any sense? That it doesn't make any sense to me why they would even bother putting it in there. Basically, they're admitting like, hey, we failed miserably at our jobs, but you can't sue us for that because that's our job. FINRA's regulatory immunity is absolute, and even assuming plaintiff's implication that FINRA somehow failed in its regulatory duties was true, and it's not, FINRA's immunity extends to the improper performance of regulatory adjudicatory or prosecutorial duties delegated by the SEC. Okay, so if they improperly regulated, that's one thing. If they purposely improperly regulated, that's another entirely. You cannot use your role as a self-regulatory agency with certain duties endowed upon you by Congress to manipulate the market, to put your thumb on the scale, to do things that are outside the bounds of your authority and are unethical with the power you wield, which is what Rose is arguing. So if you're going to argue that, even if we suck at our jobs, you still can't sue us, that's not how any of this works. Plus, you don't have absolute immunity. You only have immunity from monetary damages. You've been sued a bunch of times by a bunch of other entities successfully outside the scope of monetary damages. So, yeah. Okay, plaintiffs' reliance on Amerivet Securities Incorporated and Axon Enterprise cases also fails to provide a basis to avoid FINRA's regulatory immunity. First, and the only commonality between Amerivet case and this one is both plaintiffs requested some form of accounting. Okay. Amerivet case, however, can easily be distinguished because here the party requesting access to FINRA's books and records was a FINRA member firm, which had a well-defined documented relationship with FINRA as a self-regulatory organization. Okay, so they're saying they have absolute immunity from lawsuits, and then they say, well, I mean, if they're a member of FINRA, they can sue us. That's not how absolute immunity works. Okay, like, Your Honor, we have absolute immunity, except for this time this guy was able to successfully sue us. But other than that, we have absolute immunity. Or this other time somebody was able to successfully sue us. That also is an exception to the rule. In this case, plaintiff did not allege in the complaint or amended complaint that she has any relationship with FINRA. You don't have to allege you have a relationship with FINRA to sue FINRA. Namely because by participating in the market, you have a relationship with FINRA. FINRA is supposed to protect you from fraud. And if they aren't protecting you from fraud, but actively helping those who are committing fraud, then FINRA is using its powers from Congress unethically, illegally, and in a way that should get them sued to hell and back. Okay, nor could she. Second, plaintiff cites to the recent decision of Supreme Court Axon Enterprises Incorporated versus FTC to argue that as a result of that decision, FINRA is not beyond the reach of honorable court. The Axon decision, however, has no applicability in this case. In Axon, Supreme Court considered how and when respondents in administrative enforcement actions can challenge the constitutional authority of the governmental agency bringing enforcement action. Unlike the appellants in Axon, plaintiffs is not subject of an administrative enforcement action brought by a governmental agency. Plaintiff has not alleged any structural constitutional claims against the government agency in response to such administrative proceeding. Except she's suing you over the Sherman Act, which is a law and has constitutional bearing. Instead, plaintiff's complaint and amended complaint allege violations of the antitrust securities laws based on FINRA's regulatory activities and therefore subject to dismissal because of FINRA's immunity applies regardless of FINRA's alleged motives and despite plaintiff's disagreement with how FINRA carried out its function. Supreme Court's this was I think Empire Fin versus FINRA was looking for money, so that doesn't really apply. Supreme Court's Axon decision has no impact on FINRA's immunity, which applies to the claims in the amended complaint. They don't have absolute immunity. You have immunity from monetary damages. That is different from absolute immunity. You just have immunity from monetary damages. These reasons and these reasons discussed in FINRA's motion to dismiss plaintiff's motion for leave amended rules futile. Hi, monkey. For these two, the amended complaint does not cure the pleading defects that deprive the court of subject matter jurisdiction. In this motion dismiss, FINRA established that the court lacks subject matter jurisdiction because plaintiff's claims are moot and because plaintiff failed to establish Article 3 standing. Not really. The allegations added to the amended complaint do not cure these defects. Specifically, while plaintiff did amend the prayer for relief included in the amended complaint, she continues to seek equitable relief to enjoin FINRA from deleting MMTLP across brokerage accounts. As discussed in FINRA's motion to dismiss, Meta canceled the Series A preferred shares on or about December 14th, 2022, and FINRA deleted the MMTLP symbol on December 13th. They did not delete until, was it March? Because we could see that it had not been deleted yet, that no corporate action had come out that they deleted. So they did not delete on the 13th. They are lying, and she is able to show that in her filings that they're lying. Liars. Big, fat, juicy liars. Okay. Accordingly, any claim for equitable relief has been rendered moot. The amended complaint does not identify any alleged future harm that would be remedied by equitable relief. Not really, though, because, she really says, people have not gotten their shares. Some people didn't want to go in the next bridge. They're hoping to sell during a short squeeze, etc. Harm was done, and what FINRA has not shown is that how they would be harmed if such a ruling came from the court. As a result, the claims asserted in the amended complaint continue to be moot, and leave to amend would be futile. Similarly, plaintiff has not amended the complaint to meet the bedrock constitutional requirement of establishing Article 3 standing, which requires plaintiffs to allege she suffered injury in fact that is concrete, particularized, actual, or imminent. She had 200 pages of her establishing how she'd been injured. You have just not addressed any of those. Not one time have you addressed any of her injuries in the complaint. Not once. You have, 50 pages you've submitted to the court so far, and have ignored the injuries she's incurred the entire time. So it's just saying she doesn't state any injuries when she has hundreds of pages of her injuries is disingenuous, and I hope the judge is able to see through that. As discussed in FINRA's motion to dismiss, the conclusory and generalized allegations of harm to all MMTLP shareholders included in the complaint are insufficient to establish Article 3 standing. Okay, so here they say she hasn't listed any injuries, and then they say that, the injuries she listed aren't that bad, so she can't sue. For the same reasons, the new allegation alleging that broker shorting without enforcement of regulation has allowed a company the defendant has no legal regulatory authority over to suffer a loss of dilution interest, among other legal harms incurred due to the defendant's actions. It does not breathe life into plaintiff's plaintiff's claims. In the amended complaint, plaintiff fails to allege any concrete particularized injury to support Article 3 standing. Accordingly, the court lacks the subject matter jurisdiction based on the amended complaint to leave and leave to amend is futile. So they're saying, A, she never said how she was injured. B, well, she did say she was injured, but she wasn't that injured. C, she doesn't have the right to say how she was injured because she's not the company itself. And D, this court is bullshit anyway and can't do anything to us. Okay. All right. 3, amended complaint is subject to dismissal because plaintiff has failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. In the motion to dismiss, FINRA also provides additional grounds for dismissing the complaint, which plaintiff's proposed amendments failed to address. For example, in the amended complaint, plaintiff continues to assert a claim for aiding and abetting securities fraud. However, as discussed in FINRA's motion to dismiss, that claim must be dismissed because Congress explicitly vested the SEC with exclusive authority to prosecute claims of aiding and abetting securities fraud. Okay, so they're saying that you can't sue us for committing securities fraud because that's the SEC's job to sue us for committing securities fraud. So this is essentially them admitting to securities fraud. What instead they should say is, we didn't commit any securities fraud, therefore you can't sue us for securities fraud. That's not what they're saying. They're saying, you can't do that. Only SEC can do that. Okay. Further, while plaintiff supplements the Sherman Act claim with additional allegations, the new allegations include unsupported legal conclusions cast in the form of factual allegations. As such, these allegations fail to provide sufficient basis for a plausible claim. For the reasons stated in FINRA's motion to dismiss, the claims advanced in the amended complaint cannot withstand a motion to dismiss and therefore leave to amend will be futile. Basically, they're saying, she's suing us for Sherman Act violations for acting as a monopoly, but, she can't, even though she can. I mean, they've never been sued over Sherman Act before, so that would be new grounds for which there actually is no precedent. So they're trying to cite that there's precedent for this, and there is not. There's not. Conclusion. For the reasons stated herein, FINRA requests the plaintiff's motion for leave to amend be denied, and that FINRA's motion to dismiss the complaint be granted with prejudice. Okay. So again, their main argument is that they have immunity, except for the times they got successfully sued, that Rosa has to call them and confer if she ever wants to file a motion, and then they end with FINRA's motion to dismiss the complaint be granted with prejudice. When did FINRA call Rosa for a conference over their motion? Never. So, their own argument would throw out their own motion. Ta-da! You tripped over your own dick. Now they got the name partner actually doing this stuff. He's done the last two, because the first one was just such 4th grade reading level garbage. This is grasping at straws. This is not that strong an argument. They've managed to list no discovery to show that her complaint is invalid in any way, shape, or form, that she wasn't injured. Matter of fact, their entire argument is, we can't give you any of that stuff because you don't deserve it. So I'm hoping the judge goes, you know what? In order for you to claim that you've got immunity and that she hasn't been injured, you're gonna have to show us how she wasn't injured. That would be if I were the federal judge, which I'm not, and I'm not a law student or a lawyer or a judge or any of those things. But I've read enough of this crap to know when I see a big swing and a miss, and this one seems kind of desperate. It's a lot of the repeated stuff that seems to be cognitive dissonance. Like they're holding two opposing ideas in their head. You can't sue me. I've been successfully sued. Okay, I've been successfully sued, but that was for different reasons. It just doesn't swing, man. Doesn't swing at all. Okay. All right. So there you go. There's that. Big Houston. No intros. S.J. Houston, my concern regarding the FINRA response is that they are offering the judge an easy way out of making the hard but right decision, as it could trigger everything else if he gives people the 2 days back. Here's the thing, is that judges hate being overturned by a higher court. And if they say Rosa does not have constitutional standing to sue them, Article 3 standing, standing to sue a suffragatory agency, then she appeals to the Court of Appeal, and it gets in front of a panel of judges where the entire question is, does Rosa have the right to sue these guys? And if, or does FINRA have absolute immunity? And if it comes to does FINRA have absolute immunity, that panel of judges is going to look at their track record of losing lawsuits, being like, but you've lost lawsuits, therefore you can be sued. And it's going to be remitted back down to the lower court. The judge is going to get slapped by the higher court, and he's going to be forced to admit that that FINRA can be sued, and that's not the right foot. That's obviously going to put a real bad taste in his mouth for what FINRA tells him. And especially since Rose is able to demonstrate several times along the way that FINRA lied to her and lied to the court in their response, such as saying that it was deleted on the 13th when in fact it was not, that they were doing their job because fraud was involved. They never did shit about that, right? All they did was help the fraudsters. So my guess is it's going to trap them more than it will help them. It might give them a quick win, but if this thing goes to in front of a panel of judges at the appeals court, it's going to get tossed right back down to this court, and that judge is going to get a slap from them for basically wasting their time. Pearson 9, what point does Rosa take her case to the appeals court? Because this judge is either getting paid from the other side to stall or wants nothing to do with this. That's all my opinion. She won't be able to take anything to a higher court unless the judge doesn't do anything forever, because then she would have a right to a speedy trial case. Or if the judge, if the judge at all rules against her, she could take it to the appeals court. Philip Clayton, Ken Griffin keeps aging like fine milk.